I think we have to start today by just, acknowledging this really profound exhaustion that so many of us feel. It's this silent ache that we sort of dress up in the robes of virtue. We set out to help. We genuinely want to care for people, but somehow the act of caring just turns heavy or anxious or, frankly, just incredibly draining. Why does that desire to help sometimes feel so confusing and, ultimately so costly to our own well-being?
That's a really beautiful and honest place to start this deep dive.
Yeah.
Because you're pointing to a paradox, aren't you? We're not here to critique the impulse to help. It's one of the most natural, compassionate impulses we have. But we are going to explore the intentions that can sneak in, just beneath the surface of that care. And the paradox is this. We feel this urgent need to help, but that very urgency, that specific quality of helping, it somehow ends up leading to suffering for everyone involved.
I can relate to that so much. The pain of watching someone struggle and feeling like I have to do something.
Yeah.
Right now, it's like this instinctual lurch forward. But then, exactly like you said, you realize you've completely lost your own balance in the process. And maybe that's where the anxiety or even the resentment comes from later on.
That image you used of losing balance, that's absolutely essential. It brings us right to our first metaphor for today, the drowning rescuer. So imagine you're standing on a riverbank. You're safe, you're on solid ground, and you see someone out there in the current just thrashing wildly. You feel that visceral, immediate panic, and you jump in without even pausing to check the current or your own strength or to look around for, say, a lifeline.
You just leap?
You leap because you can't bear the sight of their pain, but because you moved without wisdom, without that moment of self-awareness, you very quickly lose your own footing. And now what's happening? Now you're both thrashing. You're both struggling for air. You haven't actually made things better. You've just doubled the problem. And yet, even in that chaos, you're still clinging to this idea that you're the one saving them.
So the moment we jump, we're confusing two really critical things. We're confusing urgency with wisdom, and we're confusing compassion with control.
Yeah.
I think that confusion happens because in that crisis moment, we stop relating to the other person, really, and we start relating to the emotional charge inside of us.
Exactly. And that emotional charge is a very, very subtle form of clinging. In a lot of contemplative traditions, this clinging, this grasping, it's often about identity. Our ego is just incredibly resourceful. It sees a crisis and it thinks, aha, here's an opportunity for me to secure my significance. It disguises its hunger for validation as pure altruism.
Wow, that makes the internal transaction sound less like giving and, more like a negotiation. Like it's a subtle contract we're signing with ourselves.
Yeah.
If I save you, I matter. If I ease your pain, then I am a good person. It's like we're using their struggle as fuel for our own self-worth.
You've just captured the essence of the ego's transaction perfectly. And the problem is, once our identity gets tied to the outcome, the care is no longer truly spacious. It's not free anymore.
Which brings us, I think, to the distinction between kind of conditional care and, true compassion. We all want to feel that genuine, heartfelt impulse. But how do we make sure it's the real, unattached version?
Well, true compassion is marked by clarity and spaciousness. Think of it like a steady, bright light in a very dark room. It offers illumination, but it doesn't demand that the darkness disappear immediately. And this is the critical part. It doesn't require the other person to change for us to be at peace. We can be completely settled, totally grounded, even while we're witnessing their difficulty.
Whereas conditional care
collapses into their pain. It's frantic because our peace now depends on their stability.
And we see the painful results of that everywhere, don't we? Staying in a relationship that's become deeply unhealthy, but telling ourselves we're staying for their sake. Or just exhausting ourselves trying to fix a friend's anxiety or a partner's self-sabotage. It feels like virtue, but it's suffocating for both people.
It is. Because often the real effort isn't about saving them, it's about rescuing ourselves from this unbearable emotional truth. Powerlessness. We cannot control another person's journey, and the ego finds that truth absolutely terrifying. So we try to fix them to avoid the guilt or the helplessness or the anxiety that we feel when they stay in vain.
So if we step back and look at the bigger picture, this kind of managing care, it becomes this pervasive source of suffering, what the sources call dukkha. How does that specific flavor of suffering feel in our daily lives?
In this context, dukkha is that constant, low-level, unsatisfactory feeling that just permeates your days. It's that knot in your stomach when a family member won't take the clear advice you gave them. It's the perpetual uneasiness about their choices, which makes you feel unsafe in your own skin because their stability has become your prerequisite for calm. That belief that we have to manage the emotional weather of others to feel safe, that is the very foundation of this prison built of good intentions.
A prison built of good intentions. Wow. I think every single person listening recognizes that architecture. We're simultaneously the prisoner and the self-appointed warden.
Yes, and this is where we really need to look at how true awakened care operates differently. It's the difference between trying to drag someone out of a mess versus just offering them the path out.
The famous parable of the burning house comes to mind here.
Exactly, from the Lotus Sutra. You have this father and his children are all playing inside a massive house that is, completely engulfed in flames, but they are totally unaware of the danger. They're just absorbed in their little games.
This resonates so strongly. We feel like that father standing outside, seeing the immediate disaster, while the people we love are inside, completely distracted by their own toys, their habits, their blind spots.
Precisely. Now, the father in the story, he doesn't scream at them. He doesn't demand they recognize the reality of the fire. And he doesn't physically drag them out because that would disrespect their autonomy and just cause a traumatic scene. Instead, he uses what's called skillful means. He calls out calmly, enticingly, "Come quickly. Outside, I have wonderful treasures for you, magnificent jeweled chariots."
So he doesn't focus on the danger they're in. He focuses on the treasure they could gain. He's offering a path and a promise. He's meeting them where their attention already is.
He respects their journey. He knows he can't force their realization. He can only inspire their movement. The ego, on the other hand, it practices urgency. It stands at the window screaming, "You're broken. I see the fire. Let me fix you right now." The ego demands a rescue. The compassionate father offers a path.
And that urgent demand, it reveals the underlying force we have to confront, doesn't it? This really intense, subtle craving. We usually think of craving for, food or money, but you're talking about a more spiritualized craving.
I am. It's the subtle, profound craving to be needed, to be essential, to be the one who mends what is broken. And this craving is rooted in the fear of irrelevance, the fear that if we step back, if we aren't actively doing, fixing, rescuing, then we're just empty or invisible.
This connects directly back to that feeling of burnout, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because I've definitely felt burnt out, not from the amount of work, but from the sheer weight of carrying the outcome, feeling personally responsible for whether they sink or swim.
Okay.
And this is where the modern parable of the anxious therapist is just so powerful. You can see this pattern so clearly in professionals or even just in highly sensitive friends. They're deeply committed to their client or their friend, but then they start to feel restless, irritable, even when the client doesn't progress on their timeline. They might feel this deep resentment when a session is canceled. And it's not about the lost income. It feels like a rejection of their competence, or worse, their very identity as the expert.
The exhaustion comes from fusing your entire sense of worth with the success of another person. When they stumble, your sense of self-worth falls right along with them. And the crushing, devastating question that arises in the silence, often unvoiced, is this: am I truly helping them, or am I just proving to myself that I can?
Oh, that's it. That's the pivot point. So if we recognize we're acting from that place of proving, how do we even begin to untangle that knot? It feels so deeply ingrained.
This is where mindfulness becomes such a revolutionary tool. And I don't mean as a relaxation technique, but as active investigative attention. It helps us reveal the why that's hidden beneath the act. It's like sacred archaeology we perform on our own hearts.
And what does that look like, practically?
It begins with the pause. The moment you feel that urgent, visceral pull to save someone, just stop. Physically note the signals in your body. The tightening in your chest, the forward-leaning posture, the racing thoughts demanding action. And just hold it for 3 breaths. Then you ask the question very softly with no judgment. Is this energy for them, or is this anxiety about me?
That initial pause is everything. It interrupts the automatic surge of the rescuer identity. And I imagine when we pause like that, we might find some uncomfortable truths, like, I need them to be okay so I can stop feeling so helpless about this.
Absolutely. And when you find that truth, that you're afraid or that you need them to be okay so you can stop feeling a certain way, that is a revelation. It's not a failure. It just means you're starting to work with reality, because even when our help is cloaked in humility, when we operate from that fixed belief that I am the helper, there is often the subtle presence of conceit.
Right, and we're not talking about arrogance here. We're talking about the deep-seated belief in a separate self that has to do something to be worthy. A belief that our worthiness has to be earned through usefulness.
Precisely. And that's the belief structure we're working to dismantle. Which brings us to the ultimate shift, which moves away from the identity of the rescuer entirely. True, unattached compassion arises when we begin to understand non-self. The realization that there is no fixed, separate I that owns the act of helping,
So compassion starts to flow not from the statement, I am helping you.
but from the simple, profound recognition that suffering is present and care is the natural response. When we drop the owner, we drop the expectations. We drop the whole ledger of merit.
What's so fascinating is the irony we keep coming back to. When our help is rooted in our own fear and identity, it actually deepens the other person's helplessness. It sends this unspoken, corrosive message. You need me to be whole. You can't manage this on your own. And that's not love. That's just scaffolding.
It is scaffolding.
But this is where the fear rushes in for anyone listening, right? They're thinking, okay, but what if I pull back and they genuinely collapse?
Yeah.
What if I mistake non-interference for just indifference?
That fear is what drives us to become the scaffold. But true support is found in the metaphor of the two leaning trees. If one tree is weakened and the other, out of fear, bends all the way over to hold it up, both trees end up suffering. They distort their own growth, they weaken their roots. True support is standing strong in your own roots, offering your presence, but refusing to become the other's entire structure.
The deepest compassion, then, is sometimes not intervening.
It's offering profound, unwavering trust. Think of the mother bird leaving the nest. She doesn't carry the chick forever. A fledgling only discovers its wings in the stumbling and the falling. If the mother never left, the chick would mistake the nest for the entire sky. The greatest gift we can offer is a deep, profound trust in another person's capacity to meet their own darkness and find their own wings.
So we move from the frantic, grasping attention of the rescuer to the quiet, unwavering attention of the witness. It's a shift from trying to manage the external world to simply maintaining our own inner steadiness.
It is. It's the shift from trying to fix the external storm to simply sheltering the internal flame. The rescuer tries to smother the flame to keep it alive, shouting, "Don't go out!" The awakened one places the candle in the storm, shelters it just enough, and lets it burn as it will. That is the practice of non-interference. And it's not out of coldness, it's out of a deep reverence for the other person's path, their autonomy. Love, here, means holding space without an agenda.
This whole deep dive has synthesized the core learning so clearly for me. The shift is from needing them to be different to simply meeting them exactly where they are. That
Right.
concept of interbeing, the truth that we're connected not because I have to carry your burden, but because we're interwoven in the same reality.
And that recognition is where pure, unattached care flows from. Freedom is the presence of clarity within the desire to help, not the absence of the desire itself. Every time you pause, breathe into your own discomfort and whisper, "This is not mine to carry," you are choosing self-respect. You're practicing the highest form of nonviolence towards yourself.
So you can't really save anyone.
Not truly, not in the sense of overriding their own sovereignty, but you can accompany them. You can say with your calm, unattached presence, "You are not alone in this suffering." And that profound witnessing, far more than any frantic intervention, is what allows for real healing.
That's a challenging thought,
Okay.
but ultimately a very freeing one. To realize that letting go of the rope isn't indifference, it's love, it's respect for their journey.
And we really encourage you to practice this letting go. As you release the need to be needed, notice what remains. It isn't emptiness, it's not coldness. It's a quiet, steady light, unshaken by the expectations of others, just present. That presence is your true capacity for care.
And a good place to end, I think.
But wait, we've been talking this entire deep dive about the emotional cost of trying to save others. What if the person you've been trying to save all along
Right.
was you?